I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm excited. John, I think we should share our story. We should share our story. We should
Yeah,
let
let's do
people
it.
know our
You
story.
share. You go first, man. Go first.
So, hey everyone, my name is Tim Salau, Mr. Future of Work, CEO of Guide, and I am so excited to have you all on today's Find Your Why webinar. You know, for me, John and I have been really best friends and
Yeah.
business partners as well for the last few years now. But more importantly, we've been really on this radical mission to really help people develop into their full potential and
Yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time take control of their careers.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was actually in grad school at UT Austin, Texas, go Longhorns in case there's any Longhorns on the webinar jam. You know, one day I decided to completely just dedicate it to myself. I went to a library. I sat down in front of this really brown, beautiful desk. I had my black notebook on the table, and I told myself, like, today I am going to create clarity around what is my why? You know,
Yeah.
what is my
Yeah.
purpose? What am I trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And for those 2 to 3 hours I was in the library, I thought about what are my strengths? What are my gaps? You know, what have my family, my friends told me I'm great at? What have they told me I
Mhm.
suck at? And
Yeah.
then really what's the need in the world that I feel I can fill from a gap standpoint.
Yeah.
And from that exercise, I really created clarity around my why, which is to strengthen the bonds that people share through compassionate action. And that why, that statement has literally guided every single decision I've made, from being one of the top LinkedIn content creators in the world to building my own company in Guide, which is one of the hottest education tech platforms in the world right now, to also even the people that I surround myself with who are a part of I like to consider my family, my friends, to John, my business partners who work with me at Guide, and
Yeah.
even the community that I support that I've built for the last 5 years now in mentors and mentees.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, your why is like a really powerful declaration of where you want to go. And today, John and I are really going to be helping you with a framework on how to do that.
Yeah. 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 Um, I'll just give you a quick intro for me. So, currently working at Amazon. I'm a senior product manager there, working on a team called New Business Innovation. So we're really kind of defining the next generation of things on Amazon.com, which is really cool. And yeah, man, I mean, the reason why I think the reason why we connected in general was because of our whys. We
Mm,
connected through LinkedIn, and one of the things for me is, and I'm going to touch on this when we get into the course or when we get into this session as well, is that I went through a really painful period in 2014 where I was jobless. Right, I had no
mm,
job. I was seeking a job for 18 months. I felt really worthless. I was just in a really really bad spot. And
mm,
I took a job out of desperation at Best Buy for $12 an hour, just because nobody would give me a shot. Nobody giving me a shot. So I had this entrepreneurial venture for 10 years. I got into another entrepreneurial venture. I sold that, or I sold my first venture to start my second one, and that second one failed, and I lost all my money. And so, there it was. Like, I had no money. I had spent 10 years saving up. So it's like this devastation of nothing in the bank account, and really feeling
mm,
like, oh my God, like, who am I without like my perceived success and everything like that, right? So it's just a really, really stressful situation for me. And, through that, I said to myself, like, never again, am I going to have this type of situation happen to me, and I don't want this to happen to anyone else either, right? And that's why I started my
mm,
YouTube channel 3 years ago. That the connection of why, about the mission of like helping others, define and clarify their whys, define and clarify what they want to do in their lives, and create work back plans for that. Like that's everything for me and Tim. So, um,
mm.
yeah, yeah. So that's that. That's the intro, and I think we could jump right into the slides on this. I'm really excited to share this with you guys because we have really been, you know, Tim and I have been working on a plan to create
Mm.
a framework that's simple, right? Like, it's really difficult to try to figure out, like, what is your why? Like, what do you even stand for? And we have gotten so much clarity in the past year, in the past 2 years, right? Like,
Mm.
just putting in the work. And I wish we could kind of like inject that clarity into everybody else. and like that, that's really our mission. Right? Like we want to inject that clarity to everybody else, because the clarity we feel is so strong, and so many opportunities have come to us because our clarity is so strong, right? Because we know exactly how to deprioritize things in our lives that don't fall within our why. And when you don't have that guiding light, right? And we're product managers at our core, right? The key takeaway in product management is prioritization. And how do you prioritize things? You have to prioritize them based on a primary goal, right? By a primary North Star vision. Is it in scope or is it out of scope? And that's the same thing that we need to do in our own lives, right? Like, what is in scope, or what do we deprioritize? And so, that's really a key takeaway for us in this, guys. And so I want to jump right into the slides here. We'll see if they pop. Let's see. They should pop.
Ruthless prioritization.
Ruthless prioritization, guys. Yeah, ruthless prioritization. Absolutely. So you guys should still see our faces on here, since this is a new tool. We just want to make sure that it's working okay. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so you guys see, do you guys see the screen? Yeah, it's all working? Okay. All right, so I'm going to take this and this. Perfect. All right, cool. So, all right, good. All right. So I'm going to go. So the main reason, guys, that you want to define your why it's so important, especially in this era of COVID-19, right? The more clarity you have, the more opportunities that come to you. The more clarity you have, the more opportunities come to you, right? A lot of people float about without clarity on their LinkedIn profiles. They float about without the clarity on their resumes, right? And in their personal narratives. And then people don't understand like how to help them, what to do, right? Because they're all over the place. There's a large majority of people in the United States who really dislike their jobs. And yet when they try to seek a job, they have so much trouble. And there's a couple things that really help you unlock that. So I want to go to the next slide here. So we're going to talk about a new foundation to kind of view thinking through your why. We're going to talk about a why discovery framework. We're going to talk about turning your why into a narrative so that it's actionable. We're going to talk about some tips and strategies from a LinkedIn perspective, how to bucketize a why that you're really trying to create and dig into from a long-term strategy perspective, and the why that you need just to land a job, right? Like, I need a job right now. What's my why? Well, we're going to talk through both of those things, because those are critical things, right? So it's actionable in the very moment and actionable in the shorter and long term as well. And then how you can attract recruiters as well. So the next slide, let me go to the next slide here. Now, let's talk through this new foundation. Okay. So I feel like this is the missing nugget that literally nobody talks about. You have people like Simon Sinek who say, that's the famous TED Talk, right? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Right? Now, that's from a company standpoint, right? Like he said that speech based on an Apple product, right? The reason why Apple was so successful is because Apple started with their why. And companies like Gateway and other computer companies that were out there at the time, they did not start with their why. They started with features. Right? And that's what we do in our own lives too. We start with our features, right? We say, well, these are the things that I can do, as opposed to why I do them, right? Okay? This is a critical thing. And the only way that you can actually uncover the why, and this was a real struggle for me, is by breaking down some societal norms that are ingrained in our heads, okay? And so one of the things, I'm sorry, guys. Hold on one second.
No worries.
Sorry, guys. We got a small house, and so if you hear some voices in the background, that's my wife.
Normal.
My wife and kid, man, the new normal. That's right. Okay, so I think this slide is really critical here, okay, guys, because what we want is to be happy. Okay.
Mm.
Right. That's at the core, right? You go to college and you say, well, I want to be happy. Okay, great. So we feel that, to be happy, we need to be successful. Okay. And then, but what is success? Because nobody's really defining success, right? Success is being rich, right? And we have that definition because that's the definition in the dictionary, right? That is the definition in society, right? It is to be rich, right? So then we claw and spend our whole lives trying to be rich because we think it's going to lead to fulfillment. Okay. And that's the one of the primary issues that we wind up having. And so I want to break this down a little bit. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. We do all this for one reason, to feel a sense of self-worth. And that's what's so crazy is like it all boils down to a sense of self-worth. Because we feel that we won't be worth anything unless we measure up to a financial standard that has been ingrained in us as we were kids, that has been ingrained in us growing up and in school, right? And so it's crazy that I felt this way as well, right? Like, so this is like a real passion topic for me because I felt worthless when I was in 2014, right? When I lost all my money, I felt worth less than I did when I had money. And so that's a key focus here, guys. I'm going to go to the next slide. I think that the words happiness and success are misdirections. Okay. I think we're chasing the wrong words, and what we're really trying to articulate and what we really need to articulate, and this is a critical piece to the framework that we need to talk about with the why statement, is what we want to articulate and we never talk about is a sense of meaning in our lives. Meaning, not success, not happiness, meaning. And that meaning is different for everybody. Okay. I've never been taught this in school. We don't go about our day and say, I want to live a meaningful life. Okay, well, what is a meaningful life, right? Ancient society, right? If you look into ancient Greece and a lot of the writings in ancient Greece, right? They had a clear distinction between the word happiness and fulfillment. Happiness was an emotion. It was a quick dopamine hit. It was a pleasurable experience, right? But that gets you into this kind of hedonic adaptation. So what you wind up doing is you keep trying to seek a better dopamine hit. And that dopamine hit comes from the mindset that we need to acquire wealth, right? And so then ancient Greece also had this concept of not only happiness, but of fulfillment. And fulfillment was a very different thing. Fulfillment was the pursuit of your strengths towards a particular purpose. Okay, so this is one real element that we've really lost in our society, right? I'm going to go to the next slide here, guys. And if you guys have questions as we go along, like please put them in the chat.
Please ask them.
Yeah, please ask them. Like
this is completely interactive. How many of you have struggled to determine that foundation?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Be honest, be transparent about it, and shout out to the 182 people who are tuning in live for this
184
webinar.
Live.
Priyanka, Himanshu.
Yeah,
Shalika,
what's up,
Hamali,
BIBT crew?
Stephanie, Jamel.
That's awesome.
Jamel is Rashid Muhammad, Tegan, Lisa, Tiffany, Laisa, my bad.
That's awesome.
Everyone is saying yes. We feel y'all. We've been there. We've been there. Tiara, shout out to you. It is all good.
Yeah, definitely. So
what do you mean by meaning, John? Using our core strengths to help others. What does that mean? Right. So this is the foundation of this talk, because we want to use our strengths. We want to uncover our core strengths. Okay. And we want to help others with our core strengths in something that is deeply connected to our personal story.
I'm gonna get into this a little bit further. All right. I'm gonna go to the next slide.
And as John is talking, I am going to be doing some polls so we can interact and engage.
Yeah, definitely. One of the most impactful quotes for me when I was struggling with, my particular situation was this book, Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if anybody's read it. It's an incredible book. It's a guy that was in a concentration camp, during the Holocaust. He gets out of the concentration camp. He writes this book, Man's Search for Meaning, in 8 hours. It is a super profound book. Okay. And this quote is a guiding light for me. Don't aim at success, guys. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as an unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. Okay? He says, I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do. Go and carry it to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live and see that in the long run, success will follow you precisely because you have forgotten to think about it. And so this quote has been like a very, very profound, guiding light for me. And one of the things that I really had to start doing was start recognizing that we are not our job titles. We're not our goals. We're not our bank accounts. We're not the things we own. These are all just internal things, right? So when we think we want success because success leads to happiness, actually, we already have the capacity to do that right now, right? We already have the capacity to be happy right now. We already have enough, right? We are already enough. I'm going to go to the next slide here, guys. Okay.
So, looking at the poll,
Yeah.
how many of you know your core strengths? 50% have said they do, and 50% say I have no idea. So we have a split
That's good.
community.
Yeah.
And I love that we have 190 people tuning in live.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Shout out to the internet. It's so cool.
It's so crazy, man. It's so crazy.
This is so awesome.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, I think what's so important about what John is saying too is that, meaning is often it's thrown out. What do you mean? What is your purpose? And I think, it really is a matter of, I think even in times like COVID-19, how many of you all have asked, where are you going post this pandemic?
Right.
Like, let's just bring some context to it. What's life after COVID-19 going to look like for you, right? Because this has been, I think, for the last 2 to 3 months, and I would love your input on this, John, where people have had the time to really self-isolate, but not self-isolate with the intent of just saying, I don't care about the entire world, but I've used this time a lot to reflect on my values, my principles, and even just be an emotional support system to the people that need me. And just through that process, I've chiseled my purpose.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And
that's something to think about.
Yeah, you got to put it. You really do have to put in the work, right? Because strengths are one thing, right? But personal stories are another, and it's a combination of the strengths and personal story, and how those relate to helping others that really starts unlocking the why statement. Okay, and
so we got a few questions, John, that people want you to answer.
Yeah.
So Jackson is saying, aren't there miserable people that are successful? Why can't I talk right now? Aren't there miserable people that are successful just through obsession and passion, regardless of purpose?
Yeah. Miserable people, billionaires, right?
There There's absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. I met a billionaire in Miami who was royally depressed.
Dang.
He had his own jet and 20 cars and a personal man cave that was like 20,000 square feet to store his cars, and he was depressed, right? So, that's a
Shout out to
critical.
Jackson, by the way. I know
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah. So one of the things that people aren't really necessarily consciously aware of this mentality that success is about the money and then related to the self-worth scenario, right? They're not necessarily making that connection of the success, the happiness, the self-worth trio. And because we've never been really taught to think about it. So we don't think about it, right? It's largely subconscious. So what I started doing was I started saying, okay, how do I break this construct down, right? Like, if I'm enough, then how do I continue to foster that mindset so that I can find my why, kind of like, see clearly through the trees type of scenario? And so I came up with this question. And this question just kind of keeps hitting my mind. Like, are the things that I want to buy or the goals that I want to achieve an attempt at validating my sense of self-worth? Right? Like, it's a powerful question, because if you bring that to the forefront of your mind and you say, oh, well, the goal is not who I am because that's an external thing, right? And the things that I own, do those make me who I am? Or are they just things? Is it just a camera? Is it just a phone? Right? It's just a set of clothes, right? So you have to kind of separate that mental model and say, like, I am already good. I don't need any of this stuff, right? And if the answer to that question is, oh, it validates my sense of self-worth, then I started going, I don't really need it, right? And all of that culminated into me saying, well, why am I going after so much stuff in the first place? Which is why my wife and I, we moved down to Denver, and we pay very little for where we live, right? Like, we live very simply. We have a little 900 square foot house. Like, I don't care, right? I don't have an office. I sit in my living room floor, for work. But like, I literally sit on the floor at my coffee table for work, and I'm perfectly happy doing that, right? Because, like, I don't care. I don't need anything. So use this question as a way to kind of break down those societal norms and start realizing, oh, actually, I don't need any of this stuff to be happy. Okay, so
shout out to Muhammad for asking that amazing question.
Yeah.
So Shohei says he or she has to admit. I don't know if that's a woman or a man.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shohei. I gotta admit, I chase for prestige. I want this traditional certificate. I want NBA to be the better state, but there's no end to it. But some say you want to take a chance on your life. That's Shohei. That's real. Thank you for being vulnerable with us.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that you. Oh, okay. Shout out to. Oh, he's a dude.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I wish Webinar Jam had a feature to show your faces.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my goodness. No. So yeah, he says, how do you temper off this would-be scenario for going after higher education and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, so it's just a separation, right? Like, you can have your achievements, right? You can be chasing those things. It's just the mental. It's like, it's hard to think about it at first, but it's actually pretty easy to do. It's just a mental separation. I am not my promotion, right? I am not my goal. My goal is just a goal. It's just out here. It's an external thing. I can still chase it, but if I don't achieve it, it doesn't define me, right? It doesn't destroy who I am, right? And that's the critical takeaway. You just have to kind of start separating all those external things and say, none of these things actually define who I am. I can still chase all of those things. And you should. It's important to chase those things. It's important to have a goal. But so many people wind up getting in this situation where, like, if they don't reach the goal, right? They set so much expectation. And if they don't reach the goal, then they feel like a failure. And it's like I got a goal, and if I don't make it, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm still who I am, right?
That's powerful.
So,
that's powerful.
yeah, you got to make that separation and distinction. So Um, so I'm going to move on to the next one here, guys. Let's talk about the framework.
Let's talk about the framework.
Let's talk about the framework. All right.
The why discovery framework.
Yeah, guys, let's talk about this. All right. So I'm going to move to next one. Okay. So the biggest thing that you really want to think through here, guys, is what stories from your past, right? You want to actually like be very conscious about this scenario. What stories from the past have deeply impacted you? Okay.
Yeah.
What stories from your past where you felt like everything was effortless? Okay. What stories from the past gave you a feeling of great joy, right? Or what was extremely painful that really drives you forward? Right? Just a couple topics, right? And some of you are going to be like, yep, that one, right? And whenever I talk to people, like when we're doing like career coaching or, kind of like why discovery, it's always like, why do you do what you do? And the first answer is always like, I don't know. And I go, well, why do you do what you do? Think about it for just a second, because we don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Oh, well, I do it because of this. Oh, well, that's interesting. Why do you do what you do? Right? You ask like 12 times and you finally get an answer, and you kind of peer into somebody's, soul a little bit. And you go, oh, okay. Well, that personal story that you had from, when you were 15 or 20 or whatever is really the thing that's driving you, right? Like what's driving me is when I was jobless in 2014. So these are all things that you can kind of use. Just write them down on paper, right? You could take a couple days to do this. You could wake up in the morning and be like, oh man, there's that story, right? But you're not normally thinking about those stories. So it's kind of like, you got to just have your phone next to you, notes app, like any time where you're just thinking, but it's got to be consciously on your mind so you can kind of start stacking through them. And you could grab a friend too, right? Grab somebody and bounce stories off each other, right? Like sit down for coffee and be like, hey, would you be interested in doing this too? Like we'll both be able to benefit. So that's something that you can definitely do. And one thing here, so it's just like a really simple framework. Draw a line on a piece of paper. Put your personal stories above the line and below the line, right? You got your positive experiences on the top. You got your negative experiences, negative stories on the bottom that have heavily impacted you, right? At the line, right in the middle, that is the thing that is least positive, right? It's kind of trending towards neutral or negative, right? You want to really be looking for the outliers. Personal story that is the most positive, personal story that is the most negative. Some of those things could be a combination of the two, right? My most negative experience actually turned out to be my most positive experience, right? Me being jobless for 18 months, my company failing, that was all, that all led to me gaining a tremendous sense of clarity and asking myself questions that I would have never asked myself in the first place, right? So just map out a handful of stories, put them on paper, right? This could take you 30 minutes of conscious effort to write a couple of these things down, and they don't even have to be that detailed. Just like the time when I whatever, right? All right, so I'm gonna go to the next slide here. So I want to talk a little bit about self-awareness. So let's go. Yeah. Okay. So one of the books that really impacted me personally was the book by Amy Cuddy, Presence. I don't know if any of you guys have read it. It's a great book. She mentions in that book that the self is multidimensional. And I think this is what really makes people confused, because they go, well, at work, I'm this persona. And at home, I'm this persona. When I'm with my buddies, I'm this persona, right? And so we kind of mold our true self into these different situations. And it's important to really focus and understand that, because if you're thinking about your top strengths, right? And when you're thinking about the things you suck at or that you hate doing, right? You need to be writing down a handful of top strengths that don't just lean on work, right? What is the strength that cuts across all of the dimensions of you, right? So if you write down, for example, if you write down, I'm great at this at home, right? You have a bucket, the home bucket. What are you great at? All right.
Mm.
The work bucket. What are you great at? Right. And you're going to be able to kind of circle a couple things on that list that you say, I have a trend across these things, right? Same thing. What do you suck at home? What do you suck at work? Are they the same? Great. Put those commonalities down. Once again, this exercise could take you 30 minutes with a friend, right? Like Tim and I could kind of bounce back and forth with each other and figure this out with each other really quickly, right? So
In fact, maybe we should.
yeah, right. Yeah, totally. We could do it with somebody live as well, right? So the next piece is really where you start putting some of this stuff together. Okay, this one I think is really a really important funnel to think through this process. So you want to think through the funnel as how it ties into your personal story, right? If you recognize for a moment that foundationally you're enough, right? And that your definition of success is not necessarily one that is defined by society, that it might be very well something different, then that's a grounding point. The next thing that I wound up doing was I started filtering everything through this question, like, of what's one thing you'd be most passionate about doing for the rest of your life if you didn't need to make money doing it, and how does it help others? Because that question is the grounding question for living a meaningful life, right? Thousands of years of research have gone into what makes up the good life. Positive psychology, even today, Martin Seligman, one of the key point people in the field of positive psychology, feels very similarly. He says that the good life is the use of your strengths towards your purpose, right? That is the definition of a meaningful life. And the key in this framework is to maximize your definition of a meaningful life, okay? And take action towards that, right? So you want to then select one or two of your most impactful stories, right? So I take my story, for example, right? Like 2014, joblessness, 18 months, 10 years of financial gain flushed down the toilet, okay? And I go, man, that was deep, okay? That had me spiral to the depths. That story was below the line all the way down, right? Like couldn't go any lower than that. And then I said, okay, what are my strengths, right? I love digging into workflows. I love being I dig like ultra deep into the details of things, almost to a fault, right? Like I want to know the inner workings of like every step. And then I think about the things that I really hate doing. I think about the things that I hate doing in the context of, does it fatigue me or not? Right? Because if you look at a spreadsheet for me, I go, oh God, I got to work on a spreadsheet, right? Like that, and like administrative stuff for me. Oh my God. Like I have to pay bills. Oh God. Like there's just certain things for me where I just like have this like utter disgust type of a moment. And I go, okay, cool. Notated. Right. So now I know a couple of my core strengths. Now I know a couple of the core things that I dislike. I have an extremely impactful story that relates to my situation. And that story answers this question. What's one thing you'd be most passionate about doing for the rest of your life? You didn't need to make money doing it. Because money, I want to consciously take away the idea of money from my core question, right? And break that norm. You could still chase it. There's no problem with that. But I want to break that societal norm to figure out my why.
So, question, John.
Yeah.
Edith is saying, "How do you achieve without harming your mental health? How will we know when to take a break or just stop?"
But it all has to do with defining what is enough for you. What's enough? Nobody ever thinks about what is enough. What is enough for me right here is living in this house, which is from 1920, which is 900 square feet. And I literally have drawn a line in the sand and say I need nothing more, right? So that is enough, right? I'm not chasing a 4,000 square foot house, right? I'm not chasing a brand new car. I don't own a car, right? I don't care, right? So that's the work that you need to do, right? Now, I'm very strategic about the steps that I take in my life as far as, creating wealth for myself, right? But but those things don't define who I am.
Hmm. So, what role does humility and being knowledge hungry play when you are under the process of reinventing yourself?
Humility and being knowledge hungry.
Yeah.
I think we should all be knowledge hungry, right? But we should all be humble as well, right? I think we need to be, because we don't know all the answers. Actually, we don't know shit, really, at the end of the day, right? Humility is seen as a sign of a weakness in corporate America in a lot of instances. So sometimes you have to be in corporate America and you kind of have to put on a different hat, a more hardened hat. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I made a conscious effort to be on a team who really focuses on humility. But yeah, I think you need to be. But and if you're not in an arena or role or company that doesn't really believe in that, then it's a good sign that it might not be a place for you. So I'm gonna roll over to the next slide, because that green segment of the why is the most powerful piece here. So I want you to think about turning your why into a narrative, and I'll use my personal example here, right? So oh, sorry guys.
I'll be right back, y'all. I have to use the restroom.
Yeah, sure, man. No problem. No problem. All right, so there's a problem statement. There's a how you can help. And that problem statement is rooted in something that is your story, right? That deep, connected personal story. And it's a so that statement, okay? It's hard to do at first to really nail it. This thing took me a little while to actually really nail. I iterated it on a bunch of times, and now this statement is actually on my LinkedIn profile because I feel strongly about it. 70% of people go through life. I'm giving the problem statement. 70% of people go through life lost, disengaged, and unhappy at work. This is a true statement, actually. This is a Gallup poll that uncovered that 70% of people or more are actively disengaged in the work that they do, which is horrifying. And I'm on a mission to solve that, right? I have people get unstuck by uncovering their why so they can unlock and take action on their freedom. I'm very conscious about the word freedom because I want people to feel that they are free. And the only way that they can feel that they are free is by using their strengths toward something that is helping others, right? Where they're making money, right? Where they're using their strengths towards helping others, right? And all of those things are aligned. And if we have any questions, Tim,
so
let
some
me know.
of the questions that we do have. Humility, strength, especially, we have some really great comments. Shout out to Lori, who said humility is a strength, especially as a leader. Be a giver, not a taker, as Adam Grant says. I love Adam Grant for that.
Yeah.
Jason says, I struggle with the mental health aspect of it too. Keep going, Jason. I think your mental health is probably the most important thing, especially during this time, that you should be preserving while finding your wife. So you can do it.
Yeah.
What else?
But you know what? Let me touch on that for a second. So the mental health scenario that's related to this. one of the reasons, not all of the reasons, but one of the reasons why there's so many problems with mental health in the United States is because we have a comparison culture related to the measuring stick of financial gain, because financial gain is related directly to our sense of self-worth. So if we don't have financial gain and we are not making progress towards appearing successful from a financial perspective, then we are feeling less worthy, right? It all comes down to that. And so the mental health problems that a lot of people face are because and the anxiety that they're facing, students that are facing, is because they're trying to figure out how can they become rich. When they say successful, they mean how can they become rich? They don't necessarily want to be rich, okay? They want to find a sense of meaning, or they want to find a sense of belonging, but the feeling of belonging is misdirected as needing wealth, which is so crazy to me. And when you actually are conscious about that scenario and you think to yourself, holy shit, that is so messed up, right? Like it's so messed up. But that's what we're facing, right? And that's why I think it's so critical to disassociate your sense of self-worth from the goals that you have or the career path that you want to take, right? It like completely, it's like you took off the 100-pound backpack from yourself and you put it down and you're like, I just feel free. So, man, they like that it took me a while to kind of like parse through all of that, because it's like a lot to unpack, especially if you've just heard it for the first time or you read a passage that kind of jarred your thinking for the first time. So, but it's so important to break through that.
So, I think the question that came up from there is, Jason really appreciates that explanation. Rob says, how much time goes into defining the problem statement in your life?
Yeah. It's so there's a personal story that you've had that gives you the deep feels, right? And then you say, well, other people have had that same type of feeling, right? Other people are facing that same thing, right? I've been able to go through it and arrive at the other end. Now, how can I help that same group of people go through it on the other end as well? So it's a connection to that, right? It's my personal story that I got through can now be used to help others get through that same thing, right? And when you're at a particular job, right, there are elements that you can leverage in a particular job, because it's not every task that you're going to do at a particular job, not even your own business, is going to be glamorous all the time, right? Like Mark Manson says, you have to pick your shit sandwich. And it's true. Like, it really is true. Like you really do have to pick it, because like for a long time, I used to say like, well, I want to get out of corporate America, right? Like I'm tired of the grind, man, but you switch it and you become an entrepreneur, and then you have different struggles, right? You're worried about the paycheck, and then certain elements of that, you're like, man, I wish I had this corporate scenario again, or I wish I had my weekends again, right? So there's things on either side of this. But and so I really want to.
So,
go ahead.
Does your problem statement evolve? I'm in college, so I expect mine to change as I gain maturity and experience.
100%, right? Your problem statement might take a 180-degree shift based on something that happens in your late 30s versus your 20s versus your, when you're in college, right? Something deeply impactful, something tragic, right? So you don't know. Right. So you're basically drawing a line in the sand for now. And you're saying, these are the stories that I have for now that brought me the most joy, that brought me the most pain. And these are the things I'm going to talk about. And we'll touch on that. We'll touch on those statements, a little bit further, and, how to parse through kind of getting stuck as well, and something that Tim and I do a lot of. But I really want to talk about the career perspective and the why statement. Because there's a lot of people right now that are facing joblessness, that are facing, joblessness on the horizon. I was reading this crazy article from JP Morgan. JP Morgan says that Q2 GDP is going to drop 40%. 40%. Q2. They didn't mention anything beyond Q2. They just said Q2 is going to have a 40% drop in U.S. gross domestic product, which is insane. And what a lot of people are not talking about is the correlation between GDP drop, because there's a statistical correlation between GDP drop and unemployment rate. So a lot of people have been like, oh, well, unemployment's going to be like 20%, 25%. It's like, yeah, well, that's nearing Great Depression levels. But actually, based on a 40% drop in GDP, if that turns out to be true in Q2, which it trends to be where we're looking at, then we're on track for a statistical average unemployment of between 38 to 40%. Okay. So the most important thing that we can do right now, and the biggest reason why people can't find jobs, and this is exactly what happened to me, and it's why I know it so well, is because I looked at myself as a generalist in 2014, because in college I was told that if I am a well-rounded individual, then I would be able to get a great job. Okay. And from a recruiting standpoint, being well-rounded is terrible. It's the worst thing you can do. Okay. Because the recruiter doesn't know where to put you. So I often see LinkedIn profiles that say things like marketing, business strategy, sales in their headline. And I go, those are all disciplines. Like, those are all different disciplines. A recruiter is going to look at you and go, I have no idea where to put you. So there's two buckets of a why statement. There's an immediate why statement, as in, I need a damn job now type of scenario, in which case you need to craft a narrative that looks like you're a master of one thing. Whatever you can, okay? Scrub out all the keywords, be a master of one thing, and when you're a master of one thing, you're going to attract the most opportunity. And Tim, are you hearing kiddos in the background?
I am.
Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Sorry, guys. Okay. Well, being at home, it's what we deal with. All right. Is it distracting?
A little bit. A little bit.
Okay. Hold on. One quick sec. Hold
With
on.
that said, y'all.
Yeah. Hold on one sec, dude.
John, everyone's like, nope, it's not distracting. No problem.
It's not? Okay. All right. Cool.
Everyone's
Guys,
like, oh, it's cool as hell.
All right. Go. Cool.
I'm just a big bully.
Yeah. You're a big bully. Well, you don't have any kids. That's why you don't have any kids. Yeah. Totally. So
I just wanted everyone to hear what you were saying.
No. That's no problem, man. I'm going to put the mic closer to my face. Okay. All right. So, for now, before you define that of who you are, right? Before you really dig into the why statement, just don't be seen as a generalist. That's the key takeaway. Just don't be seen as a generalist. On your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, make yourself a master of something and target something very specific. Now, you're going to iterate on a deeper why, right? Then when you have that deeper why and you see yourself as a specialist in something, you can really determine, is the path that I'm on actually the right path? Because if you have that why, you go, man, I'm not on the right path at all. I gotta take a move. I gotta make a move, right? So that's something to think through, because it definitely doesn't, it doesn't happen overnight, guys. And if you need help from a career path type perspective. We got a course going. It's called Breaking to Big Tech. Some of our students, some of our previous cohort are actually on this class. We just concluded our first 5-week masterclass with a small group of students. It's $299. It's 5 weeks. It literally breaks down to like $10 an hour for the amount of time that Tim and I put in. We're almost doing it for free. So if you're interested in that, that thing starts May 6th. There's a bunch of details on the website. I'll put a little link in
May
here.
6th.
May 6th. Yeah. So we're really really passionate about it. And some of our students can show in the comments here how passionate we are in building community around this, what we consider to be a movement. So, I'll put a link in the side over here. Let's see here.
I could do it.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, I got it. I got it.
Got it.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'll put it in there.
BreakingToBigTech.com.
Yeah, definitely, guys, definitely. So, so another thing. So I'm gonna go to the next slide here, guys. All right, so one of the things that I find most fascinating is like there was just an article yesterday about how the average person in America right now is spending 8 hours a day streaming Netflix. 8 hours. And we spend over 2,000 hours a year at work, right? So here we are, not even at work, we're at home. So we're working at home. We may have Netflix on, maybe, it's just passive listening throughout the day, what have you, but still the large majority of people are not putting in the time, right? It's funny when I talk to somebody and we do like a coaching call or something like that, or I'm just having coffee with like a buddy and they're going through a struggle or something. It's funny, within like 20 minutes of talking to them, actually, I didn't say a word. All I did was listen to somebody's story for 20 minutes and the person comes out and goes, I feel so much clarity. And it's like, all you did was talk. Could you imagine if you put in 3 hours of work, right? So it's crazy. It's crazy. So you really got to put in the work to see the results. But man, guys, it really is like, it's staggering, the results. I used to kind of think it was like wishy-washy stuff a few years ago. I would hear people say like, oh yeah, you're why, this and that. Finding clarity. I was like, oh, I have clarity, but like I really didn't. So
I think what's so interesting about, the fact is that you accepted the grind that goes into creating that clarity, like falling on your face,
Totally. Yeah, I agree. And that's it is a grind, man. Like I read like 150 books on happiness and fulfillment and like digging into like, what is passion and ancient Greek topics. And like, I mean, I went deep, So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But and if you're feeling stuck, it's not uncommon, right? Like you might just be totally overwhelmed by this. You might not be ready to take action yet. And if you're, if you're, maybe there's too many stories, maybe there's not enough stories, maybe you're unsure about the situation, right? You just don't know what to do. And what Tim and I do so much is we write, we scaled journal. We literally are writing posts on LinkedIn and people are like, well, what do I post on LinkedIn? It's just this expert fallacy and this fear that cuts across everybody, right? That unifies everyone. And they're like, I never want to post content, right? Because it exposes like who I am or whatever. And it's like, that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be exposing who we are at our core and why we do what we do. We should be exposing our passions on places like LinkedIn, because when we do that, we attract the people who think and believe what we believe into our world. And that is the key. Guys, Simon Sinek, once again, right? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Your bullet points on your resume are what you do. But a recruiter who believes what you believe is going to reach out to you without you even lifting a finger on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the world's biggest search engine. And they are going to say to you, I believe what you believe. I'd love to talk to you. I feel like I already know you based on the content that you produce. And that is exactly what happens to Tim and I all the time. And it's something that we preach so much. If you put yourself out there and you say, 1, 2, 3, go, write a topic. Whatever you gravitate to in that moment, that's what you should be writing about. And it is over the course of a time that a couple themes will start emerging for you. Tim talks about the future of work. I talk a lot about happiness and fulfillment, right? Which are all correlated, happiness, fulfillment, and the future of work.
It's
They're all
true.
direct
We're living in it right
That's
now.
right. That's right. They're direct correlations, right? So all of that stuff is so critical, guys. So if you don't know what to post, you don't know how to post, just think to yourself, I'm going to band together with 1 or 2 people, right? I'm going to band together with a community. That's one thing that we do in the Breaking the Big Tech course is we create a community of people who are super active, who are all helping each other break through that fear and figure out over the short term and the long term, what are their buckets? The buckets of content that they write about. What resonates with not only them, but the people that they're speaking to. And because of that, the opportunities are coming to them. Okay. So I can't stress that enough. So if you're stuck, the key is writing. And it may not be through social media at first, but it's, you draw your line. What are your top stories? What are your bottom stories? Right? What falls below the line, above the line? What's the most positive? What's the most negative story? All of those things are really critical. So, yeah, that's that. And one of the last things I want to say before we jump into some questions here, guys, is you want to affirm it. Okay. Your stories are subjective truths. Okay. Somebody else externally might look at your story and say, well, I view that differently. But the beauty of it is just, it's your subjective truth, right? It's your story. So when you figure out that story, be confident. It's a story that made you feel something, right? It's a story that made you say, you know what? This impacted me heavily. I don't care what else happened on the periphery. It impacted me emotionally. So be confident in your stories, affirm them, be confident in strengths that you write down, affirm them. Okay. And really focus on, we're going to send this slide deck to everybody, who registered there's going to be a replay of this. So look at this again, play it a few times and use it as kind of a guidebook for you to get started. Let's see here. And that's really it, guys. That's really it.
So some of the questions that are pouring in are statements.
Yeah.
You definitely can't refute your story. It is your god-darn experience. Shout out to John. Rob is saying, I agree. I started journaling and trying to think through topics I feel are important. Shout out to you, Rob. Happiness and the future of work are so aligned. Fulfillment is everything, yo. John is saying happiness and the future of work definitely connect as well. Yeah, so Rochelle is saying, what does it mean to put yourself on LinkedIn? Great question, Rochelle. So, check out breakintobigtech.com because we're going to be talking about that in our course. What does it mean to brand yourself on LinkedIn, especially in a remote work future, right? Yeah. And, John and I, we've been working remotely for quite some time now. My team that I lead within Guy, we're fully remote. So, there's leadership changes that one must make, but there's also changes that you need to make with how you're putting yourself out there and looking for jobs or even standing out within and outside of your company. And we really dive deep on that in our Breaking to Big Tech course. So we really encourage you all to, one, check it out and be a part of our next cohort. We have a few people who are a part of our last cohort in the webinar jam right now and a few testimonials up, and you'll really, really appreciate the experience.
Yeah. Look at Rochelle. Rochelle says, thanks. I'm starting to challenge on LinkedIn where I need to post regularly. I have no idea what to even post. So this is that expert fallacy, right? You have no idea because you've never been trained in your own mind to think about writing outside of work. It seems like a foreign concept. It's like, why would I write? Why would I do this stuff? What's the reason, right? The reason is to build community. around the topics you love. It's to build. That's a foundational. Look at Tim and I. In the past year or so, we've built up 100,000 people following us on LinkedIn, and it has nothing to do with the followers. The followers are a result of talking about the things we're passionate about, you know? And so, yeah, God, I can't stress that enough. Just think about, what do I love? What do I love? It could be a topic that you think, oh, this is silly. This is silly. My corporate people are not going to really think like the same about this, right? Even more power to you for writing about that. Like we had somebody in our last cohort who was a pilot, and he's like, I'm so terrified to share my like journey as a pilot. And I'm like, dude, that's who you are. That's what you do outside of work. So yeah. Let's see. What else? Great stuff. Excellent takeaways. Let's see. What's the next course you'll be offering other than BIBT? I'll be the first subscriber. Yeah. We will, honestly, we could go really super deep into this topic. And I think the only way to really make this type of framework successful is if you have people together who are being accountable for those stories with each other, right? So you're kind of holding each other accountable. So I think, we could definitely expand this out a little bit further. Let's see. Let's see. Thanks for doing this, guys. Let's see. How open should we be and active on LinkedIn while guarding our own safety from stalkers? That's an interesting one. Yeah. So Edith, that's LinkedIn is not a terrible place for that. YouTube is far worse. Like YouTube, you can register as an unverified profile, whereas LinkedIn, you have to register as a verified profile. And because it's a professional network, you're going to get less trolls. You're going to get less guys that are like, hey, want to go on a date, right? Like, I randomly get those messages like once every like 1,000th message, and so those things, I think those things definitely happen less for men on LinkedIn, but for women, I've seen it be a problem. But if you're to compare any type of social network out there, LinkedIn is going to be one of the most wholesome and most supportive. So, what I would do is I would kind of, once again, band together with somebody else who's in your peer group, who is also taking the challenge of writing and putting their passions and thoughts out there with the world. So when you do get those trolls, you kind of start building up a thick skin. You could bounce it off of your friend and say, you know what? That's just people. Not everyone's going to like me. So let's see here. I've gotten your real pretty message from LinkedIn. Ugh, yeah. I mean, there's no. It's like one of those things. Like, what are you gonna do? It's shitty that it happens, but it just shows a lack of character that people have. So,
that's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It's terrible, man. It definitely happens to women a lot more. People are trolling profiles, but. Let's see. Can you give me guidance on how we can communicate the story behind our why in a concise and succinct manner? So you first have to understand what that why is, right? You first have to understand what that story is. So I was consulting with somebody recently, and we're really digging in. And we did this exercise of like 12 whys. Why do you do what you do? Why do you care about? What are your passions outside of work? Like, that's what I really want to know. What are your passions outside of work? And, I start digging into these like insanely incredible stories, right? And then I go, why are you not talking about this? And a lot of people are afraid, right? They're afraid to talk about it because they think that people are going to judge them. And it's like, no, not at all. Not at all. In fact, that is the key to unlocking endless opportunity for yourself. When you are vulnerable with your story that you put out there, right? Because once again, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The large majority of people out there in the country, I mean, from a LinkedIn perspective, the large majority of people are not putting their personal story on their LinkedIn profile. But as soon as I see those type of profiles, I am like dead stopped. I'm reading everything on their profile because they've been vulnerable and talking about who they are. So it just takes some effort to figure out what that story, and then you can work back and think about, okay, well, I went through this story. I know how to get through it. How can I help other people with it? And how can I find a role that allows me to leverage the skills that I have to make an impact on people like me, people like that. How do you know if you have clarity or just think you have clarity when you really don't have it? Okay. This is awesome, guys. This is awesome, right? This is a critical topic, because the reason why I broke down on the original part of these slides about breaking down success and happiness is you have to tear away the societal model of what success is. You have to disassociate yourself, your sense of self-worth, from your goal and your bank account. And when you do that, it takes time. When you do that, you have to consciously be thinking about those questions. Like, does this thing that I'm buying, does the things that I own, are they attached to my sense of self-worth or not? Why do I buy what I buy, right? A bunch of different why questions that spring from those that'll start making you go, okay, that's fascinating. I've never thought about that. When you start gaining a little bit of that clarity, then the real why statement can emerge. Without that, you can't have that real why statement emerge, because otherwise, right? Like, if I just follow blindly Simon Sinek's start with why, and I say, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I go, okay, they buy why I do it. So why do I do what I do? Well, if I don't have that foundational concept and I haven't broken down societal norms, then shit. Why I do what I do is to chase money because I want to be happy. Well, shit, that sums it up, doesn't it? Because you're on the wrong path, right? It's not a thing that's bringing you meaning. It's a thing that's bringing you money, and money doesn't necessarily translate to meaning. Now, if you can make money in a thing that helps people rooted in your story, then that is the maximization of fulfillment. So hopefully that answers that question, Ashritha. Let's see. What other questions we got, Tim? What do we got here, man?
So I think we have some people who are like, I've been asking myself why for a long time I think thinking of my past is difficult.
It's hard to be vulnerable online for others to see. How do you become okay with sharing your personal life with the world like that?
What do you think, man?
I think personally for me, it really comes down to why not, Michelle? And it really comes down to why not in the sense of, yeah, for me, I've been creating content on LinkedIn for like 3 years now, and I started when I was in grad school, and it it really came. I really started creating due to the fact that I wanted to be visible, just because I didn't see anyone like me on the platform sharing the type of content that I was interested in. And at that time, I was fascinated by AI. I was fascinated by product management. I was a curious Black man. And for me, I think the opportunity to create content is to ensure that I'm visible and to be bold and say, I have a voice. So, like, there's only one you. I mean, everyone is a unique fabric of their experiences and, more importantly, what they're in the present doing to create a better tomorrow. And I think you have to be comfortable with being vulnerable. I think, if anything, we're living in an era where it's time to be vulnerable, because we know we don't have everything figured out. And more importantly, we figure things out when we band together, and we band together when we put ourselves out there, right? Even though we can't step outside, like, that's how we band together. So for me, Rochelle, I think it's a realization that, look, if I want to build my community, if I want people to see me, I need to make sure that I make myself seen, right? And become comfortable with storytelling, with sharing my learnings, and building that community no matter what.
That's great.
So Jeffrey,
That's a great answer, man.
thanks, buddy. Jeffrey said, "What if you have multiple wives?"
That's okay. I think a lot of us do, right? There's a lot of us have different things that we're passionate about, right?
Mm.
But if you do, then it's your job over time to parse through and ruthlessly prioritize, right? Because our job is to funnel. The more we funnel, the more we can deprioritize things that don't matter, right? So you just got to put it through the lens of like, what is the most impactful thing? What is the most impactful story, right? Or there might be two stories that you can weave together to create one master narrative, right? It is literally all about putting pen to paper. And and it's so funny too, because people are like, man, that's really hard. That's really hard. But it's like, so we're at work all day long and we're given projects that are really, really hard. And yet we figure them out, right? Or else we'd be fired. But yet, like, when it comes to like a personal development topic, people are like, oh man, that's really hard. And it's like, it's not that hard, actually, considering what you do at work. It's not nearly as hard.
It's true. It's true.
Um,
We make it tough on ourselves.
Yeah, we do. We do. So Doreen asks, she says, I think I'm passionate about helping international students. The only problem is I haven't figured it all out yet. Should I share my story as I go? 100%, right? Share the journey, right? Draw a line in the sand right now about what you're passionate about, what your why statement is. Try to craft one. And it's good enough for right now. Put it down on paper, right? And then, that becomes a guiding light. And then in a month, you revisit it and go, that word, that sentiment, not the same. I'm feeling a little bit differently, right? And over time, you keep narrowing and narrowing, and then your why statement kind of starts changing less. And that's the key. You just have one that is all encompassing, and it takes time. So hang in there. What else we got? Let's see. How do you define what a specialist when you're new to working world? How do you define a specialist when you're new to the working world? I'm a 2020 grad in a month. So Janisha, so even if you're a new grad, you have a personal story, right? Maybe it took you, maybe you had to leave, hometown. Maybe you're international. You had to make a trek. Maybe people, where you come from, don't go to college, right? Are you the first to go to college? Like, what's that origin story, right? And then from there, you build on that. So everybody's got a story. All the stories are really important to share, and what you studied in school can be associated to that story, right? Like, how can you weave the story of what you do in school to the job that you're trying to seek, to the personal story that you have? It just takes a little bit of work to kind of write it all down. Wade, jobs want to see quantitative results a lot of time, but telling a story focusing yeah, no kidding. Focusing on why is qualitative. How can you balance telling a story showcasing the why, meanwhile also emphasizing results, but in a concise manner? So, yeah, companies are ruthless about numbers, right? And you might have to play a little bit of a game, right? Give recruiters what they want, but just recognize that that is not the 100% definition of who you are, right? And so it's a mix of qualitative and quantitative, and you just have to play the recruiter game on LinkedIn, give them what they want, but then also sprinkle in who you really are at your core, right? It can be a couple different buckets of things that you are and a couple of different buckets of things that you share, right? Let's see. Do you guys have any issue with me tagging you guys in a post on LinkedIn? That is a great question.
Of course not.
No, of course not. We're on there all the time, and we'll comment on your post. And
let me turn on my lights, y'all.
yeah. Let us know. Let us know what you wound up. What a key takeaway was for you. That'd be awesome. So
hit us up on LinkedIn and make sure you sign up to breakintoBigTech.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have fun, y'all.
We do. As you could tell, this is literally how our courses go, right? Like we're in a 2-hour session. We go through the slide decks and we literally like parse through every single question. And we dive super, super deep into all this stuff because we love it. We just love it.
And I eat bananas.
And he eats bananas. Yeah, exactly. Is there a special way to reach people's heart? Oh man, Edith, you nailed it, right? The special way to reach people's heart is by sharing your story, and you're attracting people into your world who are impacted by that story. Why do you think so many people love TED Talks? Why do you think TED Talks have become like caught on like wildfire? It's because people are sharing their personal stories, and it's a forum for people to be vulnerable. Could you imagine if we all did that and we all took that mentality in places like LinkedIn? Because it's such a taboo thing, right? But can you imagine if everybody did that? LinkedIn is the world's largest search engine for recruiters. People who are cyclists, Rafa hat, right, are going to look at me and go, another cyclist. Hell yeah, right? Some VP at like Google or whatever, right? They believe what I believe, right? And then the conversation isn't, what do you do? The conversation is, yo, bro, what's going on, man? Oh, where did you ride this weekend, right? Totally different conversation, totally different energy, right? Because you're starting a conversation based on things that you both believe in. And that's awesome. That's awesome. That's how it should be, right? So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Blessing profile is amazing for college. Yeah, right. Totally. Let's see. Maggie, cool. Thank you so much. Let's see. What else we got? Let's see. Okay. Tanisha, I think we went some of the, you mentioned that marketing as a discipline is too generic. What level of granularity makes someone specialized enough? So, yeah. So marketing, maybe there's a particular discipline in marketing. What do you particularly like in marketing? Is it social media marketing, right? Like what types of, because there are sub-disciplines within every discipline, right? And so that helps people try to find out who you are and what you love doing. And maybe you don't necessarily love doing it, but like I said, there's two buckets. There's the recruiter play bucket, and there's the deeper why that you need to figure out. Play both of those cards concurrently until you figure out what that really deep why is, and then start bringing that deeper why into your LinkedIn profile, right? So right now it's just hyper focus, hyper prioritize one discipline, and try to talk about what is within that discipline that really makes you the best candidate for that job. But then there's a deeper why, right? Which may not be connected to your role right now, or you may be too young to figure it out, right? Either way, let's see. Let's say that Edith says, let's say that you are terribly worried about entering a toxic environment. How can one come in and transform that environment for the better? Oof, man, Edith, a lot of times you can't transform culture, just one person, right? It's so entrenched, it's so deep, it's so nasty that you can't do anything about it. In which case, okay, so what do, right? You can work at tugging at people's heartstrings, right? You could work on a vision, but that might not get you there, right? I've been in toxic work cultures before. My first team at Amazon was a toxic work culture, but it wasn't a reflection of the company. It was a reflection of one or two leaders above me. It just was a toxic environment. Now I'm on a team that's great, right? So, I mean, these things happen. I would try to do as much as you can to try to not be in that toxic environment, but maybe you can try to make a pivot. How loud should we be about personal brand? I've always held back from blasting my story onto the internet. I love it. Blasting it. Is louder better? Can you get loud without coming off vain or arrogant? Yeah, of course, man. You just talk about what you love or what you learned, right? You don't have to be like bashing on people. You don't have to be bringing politics into the scenario, right? You don't have to get all like, super controversial. Like, here's what I learned today. Here's what I found fascinating today. These are my personal thoughts, right? I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just talking out loud. So, yeah, I don't think it's not like a blasting. It's more of a sharing. Rochelle says, I've been asking myself why for a long time. I think I think thinking of my past is difficult. It's hard to be vulnerable online for others to see. How do you become okay with sharing your personal life with the world like that?
Mm.
Man, you know, culturally, some people feel like they shouldn't talk about their story because they see it as boastful. I think that that's not necessarily, I think you got to break through that mental model, especially if in the US. That vulnerability is key. It really is key. They don't have to be, see, here's the thing. There's a fine line between sob story, poor me, and perseverance of a story, perseverance through a story, right? That is where the empowerment comes into play, right? People read the story, you've come out of the story, in which case you're stronger from it, which is amazing to share. If you're still deep in that story, then it's tough, right? Because you're pushing the weight of the world on other people, and you're going, oh man, like, oof, I can't even deal with my own problems, and now I'm like thinking through somebody else's problems, right? So you have to think about something that happened that you persevered through. That is something that everybody should be sharing, right? Because it's a happy ending type of a story. That people love those type of stories. It may not necessarily be a happy ending, right? But you persevered through that scenario, and so you just gotta get comfortable sharing. Tim and I have been dealing with it for 3 years, and you get your trolls, and you know, what are you gonna do? You get your trolls, man. You get your trolls. You get people that dislike you, people that, in corporate America, it's kind of like, everybody's there with you, and people aren't really like talking shit to your face. But online, they can do that, right? They can kind of do it through the, through a barrier. Let's see. We'll maybe take like 1 or 2 more questions, guys, and maybe we'll call it an evening. Let's see. For college kids, how can we start to build our brand on media like LinkedIn? For Aditya, how can you start building your brand on LinkedIn? Talk about the journey, right? You're not coming at it from an expert angle. You're talking about it from the journey. Here's what I'm learning, Here's what I'm going through. Here's something that might be useful to another student, right? Who's coming before you, right? You're leaving a set of breadcrumbs for others. What's the let's see. I think we may have gone through all the questions.
Did we?
I don't know. You guys have any other questions? Let's see. Coming from. Do you guys offer resume, LinkedIn edits as well as the course? Yeah. So we do. So like we dive really deep. Like 1 week is specific to resumes. 1 week is specific to LinkedIn, clarifying the why, tossing it on LinkedIn, how to get that message across, how to brand the header, the images, everything, right? Like how to get all of that stuff set up. And then, yeah, like very, very thorough. As you can see with all the questions, we're just as thorough with like really parsing through why resumes don't work, frameworks for how they can work. Everything comes down to the clarity of message, and that's why the course is 5 weeks long, because it is intensive. And so all that stuff translates to, if you can get the narrative right in your LinkedIn profile and you can get the narrative right on your resume, then it is a ruthless prioritization of how you verbalize your message as well. And that is critical from an interview standpoint as well. Jeffrey, she asked, at John, breaking the big tech ties to why, but how does your job as a PM at Amazon fit with your why? So I think that there's two different buckets that I play in, right? I play in my bucket at work, and I play in my bucket doing Breaking the Big Tech and doing Why Discovery courses. And so I live in 2 different arenas. And there's certain elements of my job that I absolutely love. I love them, right? And I also have my passion projects outside of work, and that's perfectly okay to do. Both things tie into my why in different ways. So my job at Amazon allows me to help others find roles at top tech companies, right? I'm helping others discover which direction they should take their lives. Now, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't take the path that I took, right? So my job at Amazon has empowered me, has enabled me to also do these other projects that I love as well, right? So you put things into different categories and buckets, and you work on them concurrently because each of them bring you joy and fulfillment. So I can't wait to get started on finding my why. I'm a writer and I need to write. I wasn't thinking of that before. Yeah, Sherry. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. What do you think the appetite is for junior talent? Seems the most want seniority. All depends on how you portray yourself, right? How can you deliver value from day one? Hey, here's my portfolio. I might be a student, but you know what? Check out my personal website. I got 20 projects on it. By the way, I can start tomorrow and crush it, right? Most students are going to come at it from the angle of like, hey, can you hire me? Hey, I need a job. Much different approach between those two angles, you know? Let's see. Edith. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, Edith. Let's see. I have so much information to share and sometimes saying it simply and not enough. Yeah, definitely.
Rochelle asked, do we talk about internships? Did you read that?
Let's see. Hold on one sec. Let's see. Let's see. Top influencers. So many, like a bunch of comments. Okay, let's see. I appreciate you both for taking the time. This is enlightening conversation. A follow-up from Simon. Start with why. Hope you are getting enough sleep. Bouncing family. Yeah, thank you, Mark. You too, man. Do you talk about internships? So yeah, so we do talk about internships as well. The approach is universal across full-time positions or internships, right? It's about attracting the right people into your world so that you don't have to apply for jobs. The jobs come to you. And so we've had a lot of success with our current students on doing just that. They're creating targeted content. It's very, very strategic, guys. They're creating targeted content in hashtags on LinkedIn that are gaining traffic to them. And Amazon recruiters, Google recruiters, Facebook, Microsoft recruiters are literally calling them. And as students are going like, holy shit, like, what did you do? Like, how did you make this happen? Like, what magic unicorn are you pulling out of a box, right? And it's like, it's because we know the game, right? We know the game. We know how to play the game. And so, so that's what we, that's what we talk so much about. Hey, Jason says you guys need a TED Talk on this. Yeah, definitely.
We do.
I know, we do. Totally.
We easily do.
Totally. Saad says you have to put in the work, not just watch. That's right. Let's see. Thanks for talking, answering all my questions. Can't wait to learn more from y'all. Hey, yeah, thanks, Adichie. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So that might be Gail. Thank you, Gail. I think it's the Gail that I know. I appreciate you, Gail. I invited all my students here. I see that many of your students join. That's awesome. So yeah, guys, I mean, I think that, maybe the closing words, the closing words on this really, is you just gotta start. You really just gotta start. And it's incredibly valuable for you to do so. It has opened up amazing opportunities for both Tim and I, and it allows us to, especially in a time like COVID-19, still to this day, opportunities are flowing to us, and that's what's crazy, right? Like, and so it insulates you from these type of events that happen, this particular event happened, every 100 years, but it insulates you those like peaks and valleys and recessions, right? Because you're just doing things you're passionate about and you're putting your thoughts into the world. So, definitely check out the Breaking the Big Tech course, guys. We go super deep in 5 weeks. Many of our students have said that it's really a no-brainer for them for the price that we charge, $299. There's a lot of people price gouging for this type of stuff, right? People charging $5,000 for this type of stuff. And it's like, honestly, we didn't even really want to charge people when it came to this, but we had to charge something because there has to be a barrier to somebody saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to actually take the time in doing this thing. I'm going to actually put some skin in the game in doing this thing. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Like, all the details are on there. And Ashritha, it's got a Google Doc with notes from the webinar. That is awesome. I'm going to click on that. That's so cool. Wow. This is like a 5-page document, Ashritha. Holy crap. That is amazing. I will save that. That is so cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. Let's see. Charles, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Can't wait to watch this back. Seriously, thank you. Yeah, Jason, of course, man. Thank you. Alejandrina, thank you. Yes, that's you. Yes, Gail, that's awesome. That's awesome. Vaccine to follow up assignments, the next talk, more content on this. Yeah, more content on this in LinkedIn is needed. And this type of topic right here, this is what Tim's company is all about. Guide, right? Teaching high school students life skills.
Shout out to Guide.
Yeah. Shout out to Guide, right? Teaching high school students necessary life skills. We focus so much about.
We're making a pivot.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Still the same focus.
Yeah, it's still the same focus, but right, like, it's just helping people with skills that they don't get to learn in school. And I hope that this turns into a movement of us, really bringing this content about why discovery to the masses. Because I think it's critical for people to know, and breaking through those societal norms is critical for people feeling a sense of job satisfaction, and recognizing that the grass is not always greener on the other side, right? And being good with where you're at, being grateful for where you're at in life, right? Using that as the foundation. I can't stress enough, like, all these kind of fundamental concepts, you string them together, they provide you this clarity and this roadmap for you to say, oh, I don't need to worry about all this societal bullshit anymore. I can just be me. So yeah, man. I hope you guys, take the time to put the work in, because it's so helpful.
So helpful, y'all. And shout out to everyone that's showing us love on LinkedIn and tagging us. I'm getting like crazy notifications.
Yeah, that's
Joy.
great. That's great.
Yeah. Shout out to y'all. Y'all are awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. That's so cool.
Make sure y'all get breakintobigtech.com.
Yes, sir.
Join the movement. Join our course. Our next cohort is going to be fire. We're really excited to take them to the next level.
Yeah.
And we only have 50 spots available. So make sure you check. Make sure you check it out. Breakintobigtech.com, y'all. It's going to be cool.
Totally, guys. And everybody who registered just for this webinar right here, the playback will come to your email. So you had to enter that email address, and we'll send the playback to you. So everybody, have a great night.
Peace, y'all.
Appreciate y'all. All right.